السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. حياكم الله شباب. أدعو الله أن تكونوا جميعا بصحة وعافية وسلامة، وأسأل الله أن يرفع عنا وعنكم وعن الأمة والعالم أجمعين هذه الغمة عاجلا غير آجل. Okay, inshallah, today we will continue with our chapters as per the syllabus. The syllabus that shows that we should study chapter 7 for week 9. So inshallah we will talk about it. Chapter 7 is titled Denial of Service Attacks. You may remember way back at the beginning of this semester at chapter 1 we discussed thoroughly the CIA triad concepts: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This type of attack was mentioned as an example of those attacks against the availability, which is the last one, the A one. You may remember that we said that availability is simply making or providing or offering the systems, applications, networks, softwares, even hardwares available to the legitimate users when they need them at the proper or appropriate speed. Okay, so if we would like to see a formal definition, which is from NIST, even though that it is, as we stated from the beginning, that you need to understand the concept and you can state it on your own way while using or stating the key concepts or keywords. So they said that the DOS, which is the acronym for denial of service, it is an action that prevents or impairs the authorized use of networks, systems, or applications by what? By exhausting resources such as CPU, memory, bandwidth, and disk space. So as it is stated here, that the keyword, for example, is it is an action that it may prevent or impairs, as we said before, that affected the functionality or making it slower or not functioning well, returning wrong results or outputs and so on of the authorized users. We mentioned many examples that, for example, you may need the registration system to register courses within a limited time frame, which is, let's say, 24 or 23 hours, as we usually do at JOC. So you need that system and that application and your account and the server that holds that system to function well and at a good speed to serve all students that are eligible to use it at that specific time frame. And also we can see from the definition that there are different categories of the affected, let's say, resources of the legitimate systems or applications. They are, or they can affect, or the denial of service attack can affect the network bandwidth or the system resources or the application resources. As you can see here, the network bandwidth, it relates to the capacity of the network links connecting to a server of the internet at a specific time. So mainly it is controlled or governed by the ISP, Internet Service Provider. You may experience, some of you already have heard that when you are going to purchase a host for your website, for example, usually there is a capacity for that, based on the number of requests of internet requests received or implemented by the website at a specific period of time. So if you are expecting, for example, that the website that you are running is for a school, a primary school, that at most or maximum they will have 500 students. It is different than having another website for a university that may have more than 15 or 20,000 students and accounts, in addition to the staff, both administrative and academic members. So, as we said before regarding the trade-off, all our decisions should take into consideration the trade-off, the balance between two things usually, or different things. Here, for example, between the cost and the capacity needed. It is not recommended at all to go far for the maximum capacity of that website, while uh, you need to pay a large amount of money, especially for individuals. It is not it doesn't have not the same concern, it doesn't have the same concern as the organizations, for example, large or even medium large enterprises. The other one is the system resources. Usually the attack will target in this category the system resources that are handling the softwares or the operating system that is running the network requests or other requests. The third category is the application resources, which is the applications themselves that are not related to operating systems. So limiting the capability of that application, or the possibility or the accessibility to that application. Let's now move to stating some examples of the attacks. And again, as usual, I will focus on the main ones. The classic DOS attack here that we can think about is flooding ping command. Ping command, you may remember that command in Windows command prompt, you can use ping command to ping your computer or any other computer connectivity. So if we are in the lab, for example, and I would like to access a file on my computer at my office, so I am not sure that my computer is on or not, to be in order to be able to remotely access it using remote desktop or anything. So I can test that first using the command prompt by writing or typing ping, then the IP address or the computer name of my computer, in order to send a packet to that IP address and come back or return by a response that will show us whether that connection is active, meaning that that computer is on, or it is inactive, which means that it is either turned off or it was put on sleep mode. So flooding, you remember that what does flooding mean? When the river, for example, or sea floods, it's overflow from its normal condition. Here, this type of attack is coded or programmed to send a flooded or a numerous number of ping commands to the targeted attacked computer or IP address or server, in order to make that connection or that link, that IP, making it, in order to make it not able to handle that high, that enormous number of requests. So there will be no extra room for anyone else of the legitimate users to access it. Okay, the other one is source address spoofing. Usually it is from its name, source address. I think that you know it. Spoofing is like forged or fake, like making a forged source address. Why is that? For many reasons. One of them is to cover the source of the attack, in order for the attack to be able to hide himself or herself, the attacker, I mean. So the attacker generates large volumes of packets that have the target system as the destination address. It will do the same as what classical ping command will do with the IP addresses, but this is usually from world area network, worldwide area network. So as you can imagine that it is difficult in this sort of attacks to detect, and even if you detect it, it is difficult to identify the attacker address, for example. Okay, the The other thing, or another example, is SYN spoofing, which is similar to source address spoofing, so we don't want to spend that much time with it. Flooding attacks can be categorized or classified based on the type of network packet that was used. It can be ICMP flood, UDP flood, or TCP SYN flood. Let's move to the distributed denial of service attacks. Distributed DOS. So you can see it in the references as distributed DOS or DDoS. Okay, from its name, it is denial of service attacks, but it is distributed in that it uses multiple systems to generate the attacks. So either there are different attackers that either agreed upon to do that attack beforehand, or just that target is like a famous website or even infamous notorious person or so, or it is one attacker but it uses or it exploits a number of systems or machines or computers to conduct that attack. Okay, and those different computers or machines can be of the same operating system or of different even operating systems. As you can see here in this chart, or in this diagram, sorry, that this attacker has control over different computers to carry out the same attack against the same target. So large collections of such system under the control of one attacker. Okay, let's move to, or let's state first here that I think that you can infer with this sort of attacks that usually it is more severe, more damaging, and more difficult to defend against than the ordinary denial of service, ordinary DOS. Okay, let's move to the other sort of attacks that carry the same concepts but using different means, different mediums. Here we have HTTP based attacks. It is the same. A specific HTTP website, for example, or address will be bombarded, overwhelmed by requests. As in our earlier example, we said that if somebody, for example, would like to attack a specific website or a specific service that is provided online, he may send a huge number of requests that he expect that that website will not be able to handle that number of requests, that huge number of requests. We have something called reflection attacks and amplification attacks here. Simply, it is like a double sword attacks here, double levels of the attack, or attacks of like different layers. It is a reflection attacks, or it is a DOS attack, like flooding one, but it is added to the earlier that we stated, that source spoofing attacks, source address spoofing attacks. So as you can see here, that an attacker will exploit a machine or a number of machines, of computers or of servers, and on that attack he will ask those computers, those systems, to reply. But that reply, or he will create a forged source address that is spoofed, in order for those replies that will or should be done by the exploited systems will not be returned back or replied to the attacker address, but they will be sent to another computer or computers that are the targeted ones. Okay, so in this case, that the attacker will like cover himself, that he will not be detectable, let's say, simply at least, and that targeted computer or the victim will be bombarded by requests from someone, or from some computer, or some system that has no knowledge about it. Okay, is it clear? Amplification attacks, it is similar to it, but in addition to that, in addition to the doing what reflections attacks do, that it will amplify. Do you know what does amplify? That is like the microphone, that converting like lower sound to higher one. Amplify here, it is making a small requests, making it a larger one, to take it to the extent, and that will cause like overwhelming burden on the victim systems or resources in general, making it unavailable either, or slow. Okay, now let's move to the defenses. We talked about the attacks themselves, the DOS and the DDoS, and some types of them, how do they function, and now let's talk about how shall we defend against them. As usual, and as I stated before, and as I wrote, if you remember, on the whiteboard on the class that the majority of defenses will be at the three main steps: prevention, detection, and reaction. Okay, now let's see the prevention first. As we said many times, that it is not possible to 100% to defend a system. Okay, so it is not possible to prevent all sort of attacks, but we need to at least be prepared to try, make it a try. So these attacks cannot be prevented entirely, but most of them at least should be prevented. Okay, so we need, for example, to do many things in order to avoid that, even if we couldn't prevent them completely, but at least we avoid them. So we can use, for example, mirror or replicated server. So when high performance is needed or is required, so both servers, for example, will work in parallel together. We can, for example, use intrusion prevention detection system, IDS, intrusion detection system, in order to detect any anomaly, any abnormal behavior, any unusual requests that is higher than usual. For example, our website used to receive 1000 requests every day on average. Suddenly there is a surge on it. There is a dramatic increase on it to 10,000 of that day. So there should be a detection for that in order to prevent it before reaching the limit of our capacity that we won't be able to handle. Okay, other things that we can implement, for example, is captcha, for example, that you may see it, which is a graphical puzzle or even just a graphical tick that the user that would like to access our system before entering his credentials, for example, he should solve that puzzle or tick that in order to know that he is a human, and this is a human request. It is not a programmed or coded generator that is generating that. In that way, we may be able to prevent that DOS attack. Okay. Sorry. Other things that we can do that at a later stage, if we are not able, or if we were not able to prevent that attack, we have to have a plan how we are going to respond to it. Okay, so we have like incident response plan, or and we have contingency plan, like emergency plan, incident response plan, how we are going to deal with that incident. Now we are receiving too many requests that our server couldn't handle, and it freezes, for example. It stops. Do we have a plan? Do you have, for example, a backup server that we can run in order to balance the 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 overload of it? Do we have the capability to trace back those requests and know or detect or identify the sources of them and block the IP addresses, for example? There are some ways. For example, if we were able to identify that those requests are from outside Saudi Arabia, from abroad, so we can, for example, limit the accessibility to be only from within Saudi Arabia. Or if we know exactly the IP addresses of the attackers or of the generators of those requests, we can block them. Okay, so we need to have sort of traffic filtering. We need to have like a service level agreement with the ISP, internet service providers, who will be responsible of what, who is responsible of doing A, and who is responsible of B, C, and D, and so on. Okay, so we need to identify the type of the attack in order to be able to react to it. We need to have the backup and the support, the help desk of the ISP, internet service provider. We have to implement the contingency, like emergency, in other words, plan. Are we prepared to switch to alternative backup servers and so on? Are we able to move our website to another IP or another host and making it running until we solve the problem? Okay, and after that we need to have an update for the incident response plan based on the analysis and based on the lessons learned from the attacks that we have just endured, in order to be more prepared and ready for future similar incidences. Okay, so I know that I was a bit hurry on this chapter, but it was intended. I don't want to explain everything with details that make you maybe lost, especially that this is or this experience might be for the first time for you, and it is for the first time for me to explain online and or to deliver a recorded lecture without having anyone in front of me. But I think that, and I believe that this will sort, or this will serve the purpose, and so serve the goals of this course. Inshallah, the course learning outcomes are served by are served by what we have mentioned now. If you have any question, please raise them on the discussion forum that a few days ago we created, and inshallah later on we will see if it is possible to have like a mutual time that is fine for me and you together, and have like a live session for question and answering. But for the time being, I encourage all of you to study the chapters from the slides and from the book week by week as per the syllabus, and wait for the recorded lectures that I will prepare inshallah and send you in due course. So this is for week 9 inshallah, and inshallah within a few days I will send for the lecture for week 10, which is chapter 8 inshallah, for intrusion detection systems inshallah, and we will keep it going. Reply me please whether you have received the instructions for assignment 1 and assignment 2, and whether they are clear or not, if you would like some elaboration or explanation. May Allah protect and bless all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.